The garage smelled like motor oil and broken promises. I sat hunched over my pickup's engine at midnight, wrench in hand, listening to my wife's voice drift through the kitchen window. Ayla thought I couldn't hear her, but sound carries differently at night in Mossfield, especially when you're trying not to listen. "I can't keep doing this," she whispered into her phone. "Rhett's getting suspicious." "My name is Rhett Vossin, and I run a small tool shed manufacturing company in this forgotten corner of the Midwest. Mossfield used to matter, back when the factories hummed and people had money to spend. Now it's the kind of place where everyone knows your business before you do, where the biggest excitement comes from watching your neighbors' marriages implode." I should have confronted her right then. Instead, I tightened a bolt that didn't need tightening and pretended my world wasn't cracking apart like old paint. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. My daughter Sierra stomped into the garage, her face twisted with teenage fury and something else. Disappointment, maybe. At 18, she'd inherited her mother's sharp features and my stubborn streak, a combination that made family dinners feel like diplomatic negotiations. "Dad, stop being such a creep," she snapped, not bothering with pleasantries. "Mom's just getting what you never gave her." I looked up from the engine, wiping grease on my jeans. "And what exactly is it that I never gave her?" "Attention, romance, a reason to stay interested." Sierra crossed her arms, looking like a prosecutor delivering closing arguments. "Hayes actually listens to her." Hayes. There it was, the name I'd been dreading. Hayes Rellin, local gym owner and self-appointed town hero. The kind of guy who posted shirtless workout videos and called it motivation. The kind of guy who'd apparently been motivating my wife right out of our marriage. "Hayes, huh?" I kept my voice level, casual. "That's interesting. Don't act like you don't know." Sierra's voice carried that special brand of cruelty that only family can deliver. "Everyone's talking about it. Mom deserves better than this dump in your sarcastic attitude." She gestured around the garage, my sanctuary filled with tools, half-finished projects, and the accumulated debris of 20 years in business. To her, it probably looked like failure. To me, it represented every small victory I'd managed to scratch out in a town that ate dreams for breakfast. "Your mother's an adult," I said finally. "She can make her own choices. At least you're not denying it." Sierra turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, I think you're both idiots, but she's trying to be happy, and you're just existing." The garage fell silent after she left, except for the distant hum of the refrigerator and the tick of cooling metal. I stared at the engine, seeing my reflection fractured in the chrome air filter. 43 years old, graying at the temples, hands permanently stained with honest work. When had I become the villain in my own story? I walked inside, moving carefully through the darkened house. Ayla's purse sat on the kitchen counter, her laptop open beside it. The screen glowed with our joint insurance portal. She'd forgotten to log out. That's when I saw it. Dr. Arden Weller's office, treatment for chlamydia, Ayla's name on the claim, dated 3 weeks ago. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the records, finding a second claim from the same day, same diagnosis, different patient. Hayes Rellin. The pieces clicked together with the cold precision of a well-oiled machine. The late-night phone calls, the training sessions at Hayes's gym, the new lingerie I'd found in the laundry, tags still attached, the way she flinched when I touched her, like I was contaminated. I screenshotted everything, my phone's camera flash illuminating the kitchen like lightning. Evidence, proof, the smoking gun I'd never wanted to find. Upstairs, Ayla slept peacefully, her dark hair spread across the pillow like spilled ink. She looked younger in sleep, more like the woman I'd married 20 years ago. The woman who'd laughed at my jokes and believed in my dreams before Mossfield ground them down to dust. I thought about waking her, demanding explanations, starting the fight that would end everything. Instead, I went back to the garage and finished working on the truck. Some conversations are better had in daylight, when you can see the damage clearly. The next morning arrived gray and drizzling, typical Mossfield weather that matched the town's perpetual mood. I made coffee and waited, watching Ayla move through her morning routine with practiced efficiency. She wore her lawyer clothes, a sharp blue suit that cost more than most people in town made in a week. Her firm specialized in personal injury cases, helping people navigate the aftermath of accidents and betrayals. The irony wasn't lost on me. "You're up early," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Couldn't sleep." I sipped my coffee, studying her face. "Funny thing about our insurance. Did you know they send notifications for every claim?" Her hand froze halfway to her coffee cup. "What do you mean?" "Dr. Weller's office. 3 weeks ago. Interesting coincidence that Hayes filed the same claim on the same day." The color drained from her face, leaving her looking pale and exposed. "Rhett, I can explain. Can you?" I leaned back in my chair, surprised by how calm I sounded, because I'm genuinely curious about the explanation for this one. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. She sat down heavily, her composure cracking like ice on a warm day. "It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. It didn't mean anything." "Which part? The cheating or the infection? Don't be crude." "Crude?" I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "Ayla, you gave me an STI. Crude doesn't begin to cover this situation. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The firm, the bills, Sierra's college fund. So you decided to work out your stress with Hayes Rellin. It just happened. He was there, he listened, and apparently he shared more than just his feelings." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Rhett. It's over now. I ended it." "When?" "Yesterday, after I got the test results." I nodded slowly, processing this information. "So you're sorry you got caught, not sorry you did it." "That's not fair." "Fair?" I stood up, my chair scraping against the linoleum. "You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been having this conversation before you decided to redecorate our marriage." I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, needing space to think, to plan, to figure out how to navigate this new reality. Ayla called after me, but I didn't turn around. Some conversations end before they begin. The drive through town took me past all the familiar landmarks of my shrinking world. The shuttered factory where my father had worked, the high school where Sierra would graduate in 2 months, the gym where my wife had apparently discovered new forms of exercise. I parked outside Mick's Tavern, the kind of dive bar that served as Mossfield's unofficial therapy center. Mick Torino had been my friend since high school, back when we thought the world owed us something. Now we knew better. "Little early, even for you," Mick said as I walked in. The place smelled like stale beer and disappointment, with undertones of industrial-strength disinfectant. "Coffee," I said, sliding onto a bar stool, "and whatever wisdom you're dispensing today." "Wisdom's extra." He poured coffee from a pot that had seen better decades. "You look like someone ran over your dog." "Worse, someone ran over my marriage." I told him everything, the insurance claims, the confrontation, Ayla's non-apology apology. Mick listened without judgment, occasionally nodding or making non-committal sounds. When I finished, he refilled my cup and leaned against the bar. "So what's the plan?" he asked. "Plan? You're Rhett Vossin. You don't take anything lying down, especially not this. So what's the plan?" I stared into my coffee, seeing my reflection distorted in the dark surface. "I don't know yet." "Well, when you figure it out, make sure it hurts where they least expect it. The physical stuff heals. The other stuff, that sticks around." I left the tavern with Mick's words echoing in my head. Make it hurt where they least expect it. The idea had a certain appeal, like a song you can't stop humming. My phone buzzed with a text from Sierra. "Mom's crying. Fix this." I typed back, "Some things can't be fixed." Her response came immediately, "Then don't make it worse." Too late for that, I thought. Way too late. The next few days passed in a haze of forced normalcy. Ayla and I moved around each other like polite strangers, maintaining the fiction of our marriage for Sierra's benefit. But Mossfield is a small town, and secrets have a way of growing legs. Mrs. Bragg, our 70-something neighbor, had positioned herself as the unofficial town crier. She spent her days stationed at her front window, documenting the comings and goings of everyone within a 3-block radius. Her intel network rivaled anything the government had put together. "Morning, Rhett," she called from her porch as I loaded tools into my truck. "Heard Ayla's been spending a lot of time at that new gym." "People need exercise," I replied, not breaking stride. "Oh, I'm sure she's getting plenty of that." Mrs. Bragg's smile could have cut glass. "Hayes is such a dedicated trainer. Very hands-on approach from what I hear." The whole town knew. Of course they did. In Mossfield, trying to keep an affair secret was like trying to hide a bonfire in your backyard. Someone always saw the smoke. I drove to my workshop, a converted warehouse on the edge of town, where I manufactured custom storage sheds and outdoor furniture. My business partner, Len Kowalski, was already there, assembling a garden shed with the methodical precision of a man who'd spent 40 years working with his hands. "You look terrible," he said without looking up from his work. "Thanks, that's exactly what I needed to hear." "Ayla still playing house with the musclehead?" Len had the social graces of a sledgehammer, but he was loyal and reliable, qualities in short supply these days. We'd started the business together 15 years ago with nothing but ambition and a shared hatred of working for other people. Something like that. "You want my advice?" "Not particularly." "I'm giving it anyway. Cut your losses. Take half of everything and start over somewhere else. This town's finished anyway." He wasn't wrong. Mossfield was circling the drain, another casualty of economic forces beyond anyone's control. Young people left for college and never came back. Businesses closed or moved to bigger cities. The population had shrunk by 30% in the last decade, but running felt like surrender, and I'd never been good at surrendering. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "Then you better have a plan, because right now you look like a man getting played." That afternoon, I decided to visit Hayes's gym. Ostensibly, I was there to work out, something I'd neglected for too long. In reality, I wanted to see the battlefield where my marriage had been dismantled. Elite Fitness occupied a converted auto dealership on Main Street, all exposed brick and industrial lighting. Hayes had done a good job with the renovation, I had to admit. The equipment was new, the space was clean, and motivational posters covered every available wall surface. Hayes himself was leading a group fitness class when I walked in. 6'2", broad shoulders, the kind of tan that came from a bottle rather than honest outdoor work. He moved with the easy confidence of a man who'd never been told no, never had to worry about mortgage payments or insurance premiums or any of the mundane realities that defined most people's lives. He spotted me immediately, his smile faltering for just a moment before snapping back into place. "Rhett, great to see you, man. Finally decided to get in shape?" "Something like that." "Well, you came to the right place. We'll have you looking like a new man in no time." The irony was thick enough to spread on toast. Hayes was offering to remake me while he'd been busy unmaking my marriage. I signed up for a membership and scheduled a training session, playing the part of the clueless husband. Over the next week, I became a regular at Elite Fitness. I worked out with grim determination, pushing my 43-year-old body harder than I had in years. More importantly, I listened, I watched, I learned. The gym was Hayes's kingdom, and he ruled it with the casual arrogance of a man who believed his own hype. He flirted with every attractive woman who walked through the door, dispensing compliments and touching shoulders with practiced ease. The married ones seemed especially receptive to his attention. I wasn't his only victim. I was just the most recent. Your form's improving, Hayes said during one of our training sessions. Ayla mentioned you were getting more serious about fitness. Did she? Yeah, she's been coming in pretty regularly, great attitude, really committed to her goals. I bet she was. She's always been dedicated, I said, loading more weight onto the bar. When she sets her mind to something, she goes all in. That's what I like to see. Total commitment. I lifted the weight, feeling the burn in my shoulders and arms. Hayes spotted me, standing close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and cloying that probably cost more than I made in a day. You know, he said as I racked the bar, Ayla's lucky to have a guy who supports her goals. Not every husband would be cool with his wife spending so much time at the gym. I want her to be happy. That's what marriage is about, right? Making each other happy. The conversation felt like a chess match where only one player knew the rules. Hayes was testing me, probing to see how much I knew, how much I suspected. He thought he was clever, but cleverness and intelligence aren't the same thing. That evening, I found Ayla in our bedroom, packing clothes into her overnight bag, the same leather travel bag I'd given her for our 10th anniversary. She looked up guiltily when I walked in. Girls' night, she said quickly. Jillian's having some people over. Jillian Reeves, Ayla's best friend since college, a divorce attorney who specialized in extracting maximum alimony from unsuspecting husbands. The kind of friend who encouraged bad decisions and called it empowerment. Have fun, I said. You're not going to ask where I'm going? Would you tell me the truth if I did? She flinched, zipping the bag with unnecessary force. I'm trying to figure things out, Rhett. I need space to think. Take all the space you need. She paused at the bedroom door, looking back at me with something that might have been regret. This isn't how I wanted things to go. How did you want them to go? I don't know. Differently. After she left, I sat on our bed and stared at the empty closet. Half her clothes were gone, along with her jewelry box and the framed photo of us from our honeymoon in Colorado. She was moving out in installments, taking pieces of our life together and reassembling them somewhere else. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check your wife's Instagram. I opened the app and found Ayla's latest post, a photo of her and Hayes at some upscale restaurant across town. They weren't touching, weren't obviously together, but the body language told the whole story. She looked happy in a way I hadn't seen in years. The comments were brutal. Get it, girl. You deserve this. About time. Rhett who? I scrolled through dozens of responses, watching our marriage get dissected by acquaintances and strangers. The humiliation burned like acid, eating away at whatever dignity I had left. Sierra appeared in the doorway, her face a mask of teenage disgust. Everyone at school is talking about it. Do you know how embarrassing this is for me? I'm not the one posting pictures. You're not doing anything. You're just sitting here feeling sorry for yourself while Mom moves on with her life. What would you like me to do? Fight for her. Show her you care. Do something other than hide in the garage like a wounded animal. She stormed out, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the wreckage of my family. Outside, Mrs. Bragg was watering her flowers, but I knew she was really watching our house, documenting the latest chapter in the Vossin family drama. I walked to the kitchen and opened a beer, my first drink in months. The alcohol tasted like surrender, like admitting defeat. But sometimes surrender is just another word for strategy. My phone rang. Mick's name appeared on the screen. You see the Instagram post? He asked. Yeah. Half the town's talking about it. The other half's pretending they haven't seen it. Great. You know what this is, right? This is her throwing it in your face. She wants you to react. Maybe I should give her what she wants. Now you're talking. What did you have in mind? I looked out the kitchen window at Hayes's truck parked across the street. He'd apparently graduated from secret meetings to open house calls. The audacity was almost impressive. I'm still working on that, I said. But the plan was already forming, taking shape like storm clouds on the horizon. Ayla wanted to play games? Fine. I'd been playing nice for 20 years, trying to be the good husband, the responsible father, the reliable provider. Maybe it was time to try something different. Maybe it was time to stop being the victim and start being the villain. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It started small, with subtle changes that most people wouldn't notice. I began working out harder at Hayes's gym, pushing my body until my muscles screamed in protest, not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I needed the physical outlet for the rage building inside me. "Looking good, man," Hayes said during one of our sessions. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up." Just trying to be the best version of myself. That's the spirit. Self-improvement is a journey, not a destination. He spoke in motivational poster cliches, the kind of empty wisdom that sounded profound until you thought about it for more than 5 seconds. But his clients ate it up, especially the lonely housewives who made up a significant portion of his membership base. I'd started paying attention to the patterns. Hayes had a type. Married women in their late 30s or early 40s, successful but unfulfilled, looking for something their husbands couldn't provide. He offered them attention, validation, and the illusion of being desired. In return, they offered him money, status, and access to their social circles. It was a business model, refined through years of practice. "You know," I said, spotting him on the bench press, "Ayla really appreciates all the personal attention you've given her. She's a special lady. You're a lucky guy." "I used to think so." He finished his set and sat up, studying my face with new interest. "Everything okay at home?" "Define okay. You guys having problems?" "What makes you ask?" "Just, you seem different lately. More focused, like you're working through something." I was working through something, all right. I was working through 20 years of being the nice guy, the understanding husband, the man who always took the high road even when it led nowhere. "Marriage is complicated," I said. "Tell me about it. That's why I stay single. Too much drama, you know?" Too much drama. He'd helped destroy my marriage and called it drama, like it was some minor inconvenience, instead of the systematic demolition of everything I'd built. That night, I drove past the Riverside Motel on the outskirts of town. Hayes's truck was parked outside room 12, next to a familiar blue sedan. I didn't need to see the license plate to know it was Ayla's car. They weren't even trying to be discreet anymore. I parked across the street and waited, watching the lit window like a detective on a stakeout. 2 hours later, Ayla emerged first, checking her appearance in the side mirror before driving away. Hayes followed 10 minutes later, whistling as he walked to his truck. The next morning I found Ayla in the kitchen, making coffee with the casual ease of someone who hadn't spent the previous evening in a cheap motel room. "How was your evening?" I asked. "Fine. Quiet. I went to bed early." "That's good. Rest is important." She looked at me suspiciously, waiting for the accusation that didn't come. I'd learned something valuable over the past few weeks. Sometimes the most effective weapon is silence. Let people fill the void with their own guilt and paranoia. "Rhett, we need to talk." "About what?" "About us. About where this is going." I poured coffee into my favorite mug, the one Sierra had made for me in middle school art class. It was lopsided and painted in garish colors, but it was mine in a way that nothing else seemed to be anymore. "Where do you think it's going?" I asked. "I don't know." "That's the problem." "Seems pretty clear to me. You're moving on with your life and I'm adjusting to the new reality. It doesn't have to be like this." "Like what?" "Cold, distant, like we're strangers." I laughed, surprising both of us. "Ayla, we are strangers. I don't know who you are anymore, and I'm not sure you ever really knew me." "That's not true, isn't it? When's the last time we had a real conversation? When's the last time you asked about my work, my dreams, my fears?" When's the last time you looked at me and saw something other than a paycheck and a reliable babysitter? She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I never meant for this to happen, she said finally. But it did happen, and now we have to deal with the consequences. What does that mean? It means I'm done pretending everything's fine. I'm done being the understanding husband who looks the other way while you figure yourself out. I'm done being invisible in my own life. Rhett, I'm not finished. My voice carried an edge I'd never used with her before. You want space? You've got it. You want to explore your options? Go ahead. But don't expect me to sit here like a faithful dog waiting for you to come home. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, leaving her standing in the kitchen with her mouth hanging open. It felt good to have the last word for once, to be the one walking away instead of the one being left behind. At work, Len was installing hardware on a custom shed that would probably outlast both of us. He looked up as I walked in, taking in my expression with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen me through 2 decades of ups and downs. You look different, he said. Different how? Dangerous, like you finally stopped giving a damn. Maybe I have. Good. Giving a damn was making you soft. We worked in comfortable silence for most of the morning, the familiar rhythm of construction providing a counterpoint to the chaos in my personal life. There was something satisfying about building things, creating order from raw materials, making something that would last. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from Sierra. Mom says you're being weird. What's going on? I typed back, ask your mother. She won't tell me anything. She just keeps crying. Then maybe you should ask Hayes. The response came immediately. That's not fair. Fair went out the window when your mother decided to redecorate our marriage. If you want answers, ask the people who created this situation. I turned off my phone and went back to work. Let them figure it out without me for once. Let them deal with the consequences of their choices without expecting me to clean up the mess. That evening, I drove to Elite Fitness for what would be my last workout. Hayes was training a client when I arrived, a blonde woman in expensive workout gear who hung on his every word. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her until she turned around. Janet Morrison, wife of the bank president, mother of 3, pillar of the community, president of the PTA. She was gazing at Hayes with the same expression I'd seen on Ayla's face, hungry and desperate and completely unaware of how obvious she was being. Rhett! Hayes waved me over. Perfect timing. I was just telling Janet about your progress. You should be proud of yourself, man. The transformation has been incredible. Thanks. I've learned a lot. That's what we're here for, helping people become the best version of themselves. I nodded and headed to the weight room, but I could feel Hayes watching me, trying to read my expression. He was starting to realize that something had changed, that the dynamic between us had shifted in ways he didn't understand. I worked out with methodical intensity, pushing through exercises with a focus that had nothing to do with fitness and everything to do with preparation. I was getting ready for something, though I wasn't entirely sure what yet. After my workout, I found Hayes in his office, updating client files on his computer. The door was open, but I knocked anyway. Great session today, he said without looking up. You're really hitting your stride. I wanted to thank you. For what? For opening my eyes, for showing me what I was missing. He finally looked up, confusion flickering across his features. I'm not sure I follow. You've taught me that nice guys really do finish last, that playing by the rules is for suckers, that if you want something in this world you have to take it. Rhett, I think there might be some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding at all. I see everything clearly now. I turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. Oh, and Hayes? You might want to be more careful about where you park your truck. Small towns have big eyes. I left him sitting there, trying to process what I'd just said. Let him wonder. Let him worry. Let him spend the next few days looking over his shoulder and jumping at shadows. The game was just beginning. The beauty of a small town is that everyone thinks they know everyone else's business. The curse of a small town is that everyone thinks they know everyone else's business. I'd spent 20 years being predictable, reliable Rhett Vossin, the guy who paid his bills on time, never caused trouble, and always took the high road. That predictability was about to become my greatest weapon. I started with research, spending my evenings at the public library instead of drinking at Mick's Tavern. Mossfield's librarian, Mrs. Patterson, was a sweet woman in her 60s who remembered when the town mattered. She helped me navigate the digital archives, pulling up property records, business licenses, and court filings with the enthusiasm of someone who rarely got to use her skills. "Researching local history?" she asked, peering over her reading glasses. "Something like that." What I was really researching was Hayes Rellin's history, his business practices, his financial situation, his relationships with clients and creditors. Information was power, and I was building an arsenal. Elite Fitness was leveraged to the hilt. Hayes had borrowed heavily to fund his expansion, using the gym equipment and building improvements as collateral. He was also behind on several payments, utilities, insurance, loan installments. The successful businessman image was mostly smoke and mirrors. More interesting were the patterns I found in public records. Hayes had a history of relationships with married clients that ended badly. In his previous location, 3 different women had filed restraining orders against him within a 6-month period. He'd left town quickly after that, relocating to Mossfield with a clean slate and a new set of potential victims. I wasn't his first mark. I wouldn't be his last unless someone stopped him. Armed with this information, I began phase 2 of my plan, social engineering. Mossfield ran on gossip the way cars ran on gasoline. Mrs. Bragg was the primary distributor, but there were secondary networks, the coffee shop, the beauty salon, the church social committee. I started planting seeds, casual observations that would grow into larger conversations. "Hayes seems to be doing well for himself," I mentioned to the barber while getting a haircut. "Business is good, I hear. Lots of dedicated clients." "Very dedicated. Some of them practically live there." "Well, fitness is important, especially for people our age." "Absolutely. Though I wonder sometimes about all those late-night training sessions. Seems like a lot of extra work." The barber's scissors paused for just a moment. "Late-night sessions?" "Oh, probably nothing. I just noticed cars in the parking lot at odd hours, but I'm sure it's all legitimate business." By the end of the week, half the town was speculating about what really went on at Elite Fitness after hours. I didn't have to lie or exaggerate. I just had to point people in the right direction and let their imaginations do the rest. Meanwhile, Ayla was spiraling. She'd started showing up at home at random times, apparently looking for something she couldn't find. She'd stand in the living room or kitchen, staring at family photos with an expression I couldn't read. "Are you okay?" I asked during one of these visits. "I'm fine, just picking up some things." But she never seemed to take anything with her. She'd wander through the house like a ghost haunting her former life, then leave without explanation. Sierra was caught in the middle, splitting her time between our house and wherever Ayla was staying. She'd become withdrawn, spending most of her time in her room or at friends' houses. The few conversations we had were tense and awkward. "Mom says you're being vindictive," she told me one evening. "What do you think?" "I think you're both acting like children." "Maybe, but I didn't start this game." "So you're going to finish it?" "Something like that." She studied my face with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle. "You're different, Dad. Harder. People change. Not you. You've always been the stable one, the one who held everything together." Maybe that was the problem. The conversation ended there, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. Sierra was smart, too smart for her own good sometimes. She was starting to realize that her reliable, predictable father had been replaced by someone she didn't recognize, The breakthrough came on a Thursday evening. I was working late at the shop when Len burst through the door with news that would change everything. "You're not going to believe this," he said, practically vibrating with excitement. "Try me." I was having a beer at Murphy's, and Jillian Reeves walks in. You know, Ayla's friend? I knew Jillian. Divorce attorney, professional man-hater, the kind of woman who viewed marriage as a temporary inconvenience on the road to financial independence. "She's 3 sheets to the wind," Len continued, "and she starts bragging to anyone who'll listen about this brilliant plan she's been working on." "What kind of plan?" "Revenge. Against you." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Jillian hadn't just been supporting Ayla through her affair, she'd been orchestrating it. The late-night phone calls, the encouragement to explore her options, the convenient introduction to Hayes. It had all been part of a larger scheme. "She's still mad about that thing from years ago," Len said. "When you got her fired from the county planning office." I remembered now. Jillian had been taking bribes from developers, approving permits for projects that should never have been built. I'd been the one to report her, the whistleblower who'd ended her political career and forced her into private practice. She'd been planning her revenge for 5 years, waiting for the right opportunity to destroy my marriage and humiliate me in front of the entire town. "There's more," Len said. "She's been skimming money from Ayla's accounts. Something about therapy bills that don't exist. She's been bleeding your wife dry while convincing her to leave you." The scope of the betrayal was breathtaking. Jillian had manipulated Ayla into an affair, stolen her money, and destroyed our family, all to settle a grudge that had nothing to do with my marriage. But knowing the truth also gave me power. Jillian thought she was the puppet master, pulling strings from behind the scenes. She had no idea that I'd figured out her game. "What are you going to do?" Len asked. "I'm going to give her exactly what she wants." "Which is?" "A front row seat to my destruction." The plan crystallized over the next few days. Jillian wanted to see me broken, humiliated, reduced to nothing. She wanted the whole town to witness my downfall. Fine, I'd give her a show she'd never forget. But first, I needed to gather the players. I called Ayla and asked her to meet me at our house for a serious conversation about our future. She agreed, probably thinking I was ready to surrender. I called Hayes and invited him to join us, claiming I wanted to clear the air and discuss things like adults. He was suspicious but agreed, probably curious about what I had planned. I called Jillian and told her that Ayla needed her support during the difficult conversation we were about to have. She practically purred with satisfaction, eager to witness what she assumed would be my final humiliation. The meeting was set for Saturday evening at our house, the same house where Ayla and I had started our life together, where Sierra had taken her first steps, where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays and all the small moments that make up a marriage. It seemed fitting that it would also be where everything ended, but not the way any of them expected. Saturday evening arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything seem sharper, more defined. I'd spent the day preparing, not just the house, but myself. This would be the performance of my lifetime, and I intended to make it count. Sierra was at a friend's house for the night, spared from witnessing whatever was about to unfold. I'd arranged that deliberately. Some things children shouldn't see, even adult children who thought they understood the world. Ayla arrived first, looking nervous and overdressed in a way that suggested she'd changed clothes multiple times. She carried her leather travel bag, the same one I'd been seeing her pack and unpack for weeks. "Thank you for doing this," she said, settling onto the couch like she was visiting a stranger's house. "I know it can't be easy." Nothing about this has been easy. Hayes arrived 15 minutes later, carrying himself with the false confidence of a man who'd convinced himself he was the hero of this story. He'd dressed down for the occasion, jeans and a polo shirt instead of his usual gym attire, but he still looked like what he was, a predator in sheep's clothing. "Rhett," he said, extending his hand like we were meeting at a business conference, "I appreciate you handling this like a gentleman." I shook his hand, noting the way he tried to establish dominance through his grip. Small men always tried to prove themselves through small gestures. Just want to clear the air, I said. Jillian was the last to arrive, and she came bearing wine and sympathy in equal measure. She hugged Ayla with theatrical concern, shot Hayes an appraising look, and regarded me with barely concealed satisfaction. "This is very mature of you, Rhett," she said, settling into the armchair like a judge taking the bench. "Not every man would be able to handle this situation with such grace. I'm full of surprises." We made small talk for a few minutes, the kind of stilted conversation that happens when everyone's pretending the elephant in the room doesn't exist. Ayla kept glancing at Hayes, seeking reassurance. Hayes kept checking his phone, probably wishing he was anywhere else. Jillian kept watching me, waiting for the breakdown she'd orchestrated. "So," I said finally, "I guess we should talk about why we're all here." "Rhett," Ayla began, "I want you to know that none of this was planned. It just happened." "Actually," I interrupted, "that's not entirely accurate, is it?" The room went quiet. Jillian's smile faltered slightly. "What do you mean?" Ayla asked. "I mean, this didn't just happen. It was planned, carefully orchestrated over months, maybe years." I reached into the end table drawer and pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. "See, I've been doing some research, learning about patterns, connections, motivations." Hayes shifted uncomfortably. "I'm not sure what you're getting at." "I'm getting at the truth, something that's been in short supply around here lately." I opened the folder and spread papers across the coffee table like a dealer shuffling cards. Bank statements, phone records, property documents, court filings from Hayes's previous town. "Let's start with you, Hayes. Did you tell Ayla about the restraining orders? The 3 different women who filed complaints against you for harassment and stalking?" His face went pale. "That was all misunderstandings." "Misunderstandings that forced you to leave town in the middle of the night?" "Those women were unstable." "All 3 of them? What are the odds?" Ayla was staring at Hayes like she was seeing him for the first time. "What is he talking about?" "It's not what it sounds like," Hayes said quickly. "Those situations were complicated." I bet they were. I pulled out another set of documents. "Here's what's interesting about your business model, Hayes. You target married women, usually successful ones with access to money. You seduce them, isolate them from their support systems, then bleed them dry before moving on to the next victim." "That's not true. Janet Morrison has been paying you $1,500 a month for personal training. Carol Hendricks has been giving you money for business investments that don't exist. Should I go on?" The room was silent, except for the tick of the mantel clock. Ayla looked like she was going to be sick. "But here's the really interesting part," I continued, turning to Jillian. "None of this would have been possible without inside help. Someone who knew me well enough to identify my weaknesses. Someone who had access to Ayla's finances and social circle. Someone with a very specific reason to want my life destroyed." Jillian's mask was slipping, her composure cracking like ice under pressure. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts." I pulled out more documents, bank statements, therapy bills, email printouts. "You've been stealing from Ayla for months, billing her for therapy sessions that never happened, treatments that don't exist. You've stolen almost $30,000 while pretending to be her friend." "That's ridiculous." "The money trail doesn't lie, Jillian. Neither do the phone records showing you coordinated Ayla's introduction to Hayes. Neither do the emails you sent to Hayes discussing strategy and timing." Ayla stood up abruptly, her face white with shock and rage. "Is this true?" "Ayla, you have to understand," Jillian began. "Is it true?" The silence stretched until it became an answer in itself. Ayla sank back onto the couch, her hands shaking. "Why?" she whispered. "Because 5 years ago, your husband destroyed my career," Jillian said, her voice venomous. He cost me everything: my job, my reputation, my future. I wanted him to know how it felt. So you destroyed my marriage, stole my money, ruined my life to get back at him? You were collateral damage. Hayes was edging toward the door, probably calculating his chances of escaping before the police arrived. But I wasn't done with him yet. Going somewhere, Hayes? This is between you and them. I'm out. Actually, you're not. See, I've already called the police. They should be here any minute to discuss your outstanding warrants from your previous location. Turns out skipping town doesn't make legal problems disappear. As if on cue, red and blue lights flashed through the front windows. Car doors slammed in the driveway. You set us up, Jillian said, understanding finally dawning. I gave you exactly what you wanted, a front row seat to a life being destroyed. You just assumed it would be mine. The next few minutes were chaos. Police officers filled the living room, sorting through evidence and taking statements. Hayes was led away in handcuffs, his protests falling on deaf ears. Jillian was questioned extensively about the financial crimes, her carefully constructed lies crumbling under scrutiny. Ayla sat in stunned silence, processing the magnitude of how thoroughly she'd been manipulated. When the police finished with their questions and the house finally emptied, we found ourselves alone for the first time in months. I'm sorry, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm so sorry, Rhett. I believed. You believed what you wanted to believe. Can you ever forgive me? I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in years. I saw the woman I'd married, but also the stranger she'd become. I saw 20 years of shared history and the betrayal that had poisoned it all. I don't know, I said honestly. I don't know if forgiveness is possible after this. What happens now? Now you figure out who you are when you're not being manipulated by someone else, and I figure out who I am when I'm not trying to save a marriage that was already over. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I loved you, you know. I still do. I know, but love isn't enough sometimes. Trust matters, respect matters, and those things are gone. She picked up her travel bag, that damned bag that had become the symbol of everything wrong between us, and walked to the door. For what it's worth, she said, turning back one last time, you're not the man I thought you were. No, I agreed. I'm not. After she left, I sat in the quiet house, surrounded by the debris of my former life. The plan had worked perfectly. Jillian would face embezzlement charges, Hayes would be extradited to face his outstanding warrants, and Ayla would have to rebuild her life from scratch. But victory felt hollow. I'd won the war by becoming someone I didn't recognize, someone capable of orchestrating the destruction of multiple lives with cold precision. Sierra's key turned in the front door, and she appeared in the living room, taking in the scene with the sharp eyes of someone who'd inherited my analytical mind. How did it go? She asked. About as well as could be expected. Are you okay? I considered the question. Was I okay? I'd lost my marriage, gained my revenge, and discovered capabilities I'd never known I possessed. I'd protected my daughter from further manipulation and exposed the truth about the people who'd tried to destroy us. I will be, I said finally. Good. She sat down beside me on the couch. Because I'm going to need the real you back eventually. Not this scary version. The real me might be gone. No, he's not. He's just been through something terrible, but he's still in there. Maybe she was right. Maybe the man I'd been wasn't completely lost, just changed by circumstances beyond his control. Maybe there was still time to find a balance between the victim I'd been and the villain I'd become. Outside, Mrs. Bragg's porch light flickered on. Tomorrow, the whole town would know what had happened tonight. They'd dissect every detail, assign blame, and draw their own conclusions about who was right and who was wrong. But for the first time in months, I didn't care what they thought. I'd learned something valuable through this ordeal. Sometimes the only way to stop being a victim is to become something else entirely. The trick is making sure you can live with what you become. The bag Ayla carried was gone, along with the woman who'd carried it. What remained was the truth. Ugly and complicated and absolutely final. And sometimes that's enough.